We're currently in the middle of Camp NaNo, which means it's time to talk about fast drafting, what it is, why it's great, and why it might be not so great when it comes to editing. Hi there, my name is Katie Morgan. I am an indie fantasy author and fiction editor, and welcome to Bardic Fool's Editing Advice for Writers, the series where we talk about the ins and outs of editing and getting feedback on your creative work. So I probably should have done this video a little earlier in the month, but it's still July, so we've still got time to talk about fast drafting. I think there are some real pros and cons. So let's start with a definition of fast drafting. And I can't really rely on Merriam-Webster for this, so I'm going to do my best on my own. Basically, fast drafting is exactly what it sounds like. It's putting together your first draft in a very short amount of time. For a lot of writers, this means participating in National Novel Writing Month, or NaNowrimo. And just in case you haven't heard of it, NaNo is a writing challenge that takes place every November, and the idea is to write 50,000 words in 1 month. It was started by a writer named Bardie in 1999, and it's since become a nonprofit that promotes books and reading and writing all over the world. It's since expanded into Camp NaNo, which is 2 summer sessions, one in April and one in July, where you can set your own goal for the month. So NaNo isn't the only way that you could fast draft, but it's definitely brought the idea of fast drafting to the front and center of the writing community. I've actually already had a conversation about NaNowrimo on this channel before, if you remember my interview with historical fiction author Jessica Dahl. I'll put a link to that in the description below. So that's the context of fast drafting. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of actually doing it. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to mention a pro, and then I'm going to immediately give you the cons so you can see the two side by side. Pro number 1, fast drafting is a really good way to outrun your inner perfectionist. If you are a huge perfectionist like me, you have probably spent years not finishing your writing. And this is where I'm really grateful to fast drafting, because when I set myself a challenge to write that quickly, I basically didn't have time to think about whether or not it was perfect. I just wanted to hit the goal, and that has had a huge impact on my ability to actually finish the things that I start. Fast drafting meant that I had to write faster than my inner perfectionist could come up with reasons for why I should not be writing. And I think a lot of writers really struggle with perfectionism, so fast drafting can be a really good way of pushing past some of those negative voices and moving your projects forward. Because if you can just get something down on the page, then you can worry about judging it later. But speaking of judging, con number 1, a fast draft is often a fairly sloppy draft, which means a lot of editing. In my experience of fast drafting 2 novels, I have found myself spending a lot of time on the editing side because the original drafts were so rough. Failsafe in particular was a complete mess after fast drafting, so there's been a lot of editing on the back end. To be clear, I don't think that fast drafting will inevitably give you a really sloppy draft. I do think there are folks who come into NaNowrimo or whatever their fast drafting situation is going to be with enough of a plan that they can kind of move from point A to point B without having too much mess to clean up afterward. That said, the overall purpose of a fast draft is to be really fast, which may mean that certain things like organizational stuff or planning stuff may not be as strong as it would be if you weren't writing that quickly. I happen to really love editing, it's why I became an editor, but if you're not super excited about spending a lot of time on that part of the writing process, then fast drafting may not be the best fit for you. Pro number 2, fast drafting is a great way to find community. Particularly if you're doing something like NaNowrimo, there are a lot of opportunities to meet in person and online to commiserate and support each other and cheer each other on throughout the fast drafting process. Writing can sometimes feel really isolating, so if you're doing a fast draft during a community event like NaNo, there are some really great opportunities to get that support that you need. However, with people comes con number 2, peer pressure. If you are fast drafting as part of a community event, there are a lot of people around you who are doing the same thing, and that can be really motivating, and it can also feel like a lot of pressure. Maybe you're dealing with competitiveness or the idea that maybe you're not doing it right. For some people, this just isn't the best environment for writing. Some folks would rather pull into their own world while they're writing rather than having to deal with the pressure of everyone else around them. Pro number 3, fast drafting really benefits people who like pants. So fast drafting can be really useful if you are a pantser or a discovery writer, basically someone who kind of figures it out as you go. Fast drafting is really all about writing quickly and just throwing ideas out there and seeing what happens rather than doing a lot of planning ahead of time. And that energy can be really great if you're the kind of writer who likes to ride the wave and see where it goes. If you are a pantser or a discovery writer, you may have felt like the writing community kind of looks down on you for the way you do things. But if you're fast drafting, riding that energy is actually really useful. But that brings us to con number 3, which is that fast drafting may give plotters heartburn. If you are a plotter or someone who likes to write more slowly and methodically, methodically, fast drafting may not be right for you. This isn't to say that you can't plan things ahead of time and then fast draft. That's usually what I try to do. But sometimes it can be hard to reconcile all of that planning with the short, frantic bursts of energy you get with fast drafting. Pro number 4, fast drafting is better than an energy drink. If you're fast drafting as part of NaNo or some other community event, there's this really tangible energy in the air and everyone is really working together and they're working hard and it's kind of ridiculous and you're all there to support each other. It can be really helpful if you're the kind of writer who loses steam in the middle and you need that extra inspiration to keep going. However, because of all that energy, we get con number 4, which is that you have got to hit the brakes before you burn out. If you're not careful, fast drafting can lead to serious burnout. I tend to be really sensitive to the energy around me. There's a reason I'm writing a series about an angry empath. So fast drafting for me can lead to a lot of frustration and exhaustion if I'm not being careful about it. And this is a time where having that community can actually work against you because there's a lot of that energy in the room telling you to keep going harder and going faster. And pro number 5, fast drafting is a really good way to see how small steps can lead to big progress. As I mentioned earlier, before NaNo, I spent years not finishing my work and feeling like a total failure when it came to my writing. But when I learned about the concept of fast drafting, I began to see how really, really small daily goals could get me to a finished book. I stopped looking for these mythical big chunks of time I needed to finish this book, and I just did it by small steps every day. And that's really what got me to my first published book, and I'm hoping it's what will get me to many more published books. However, for con number 5, I do want to point out that not everyone does it daily. So when you're fast drafting, there's usually this emphasis on doing small goals every day, and especially around NaNo time, if you're not hitting your daily goals, there's a lot of shame and frustration around that. And the thing is that while I think writing daily can be incredibly helpful, it's certainly been helpful for me in terms of reaching my goals, it's not necessarily the method that everyone uses. So if you're trying to fast draft and you feel like you need to be writing for an hour a day every day and you're actually the kind of writer who would benefit more from doing a couple of hours on the weekend, fast drafting may not be the best fit for you. At least not if it's the sort of fast drafting that involves writing every day. So in case it wasn't clear from all of that, I personally love fast drafting and I feel like it has definitely changed my life for the better. However, I absolutely do not think it's the only way to draft. And even if you love it, there are some negative consequences for doing it, especially in the realm of editing. So in the end, I say if NaNo or some other fast drafting situation really works for you, then by all means do it. And if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. You should be trying to find methods that really work for you in terms of moving your creative projects forward and hopefully having a good time while you do it. So how do you feel about fast drafting? Are you doing Camp NaNo this month? Are you considering doing NaNo in November? Or do you prefer not to do any of this at all? Let us know in the comments. If you've got a fast drafted piece that's ready for another set of eyes, you can find out more about my editing services below. And if you'd like to see what a completed NaNo novel looks like, you should check out my contemporary fantasy novel, Dark Empathy. I've got info below. That was my 2017 NaNo project. That's it for this episode of Bardic Fool's Editing Advice for Writers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.